This video is about dimensioning strategies. So I am back here on the Careful project, and I'm on the first floor, and this is the way how I like to dimension and how I like my guys in the studio to dimension. First of all, these grid lines, I like to stretch them out a little bit further, and the dimensioning should happen really in 3 stages. So the first stage is from one end of the house to the other end of the house, and I'll pull it really closer to my grid line so they can know right away from grid line A to grid line D is 49 feet 11 inches. And of course, I also like to make sure that my walls, if I'm using grid lines, that the grid lines and the walls are attached. That way, if I move my grid line, the walls move along with it. So that's one, and if they're not attached, you just attach them. So anyway, the first line is the overall dimension, and then I'll have a second line of dimension that really defines kind of each space that's in the project. And you notice that I will be using like similar walls. So for instance, if I click to the outside wall for the dimension, I'm not going to start clicking to the inside wall on this particular wall. I'm going to stay on the outside. And the second line stays like that, really close, hugged into the overall dimensions. And then the third line of dimensions are all your openings and your doors and such. So again, DD. When it comes to windows and doors, proper convention is to do it to the center line of windows, which is fine, but you could also do edge of windows. So they're kind of different, but old school is center line, and I prefer it to be on the center line. And again, I'm going to dimension to the same wall, so that way 2'10", 6'10" equals 9'8", right? Center line to the same wall. This one doesn't really require anything, and that doesn't require, oh, yeah, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. And then I really don't. So you can see here, all these dimensions are meant to line up or add up. So 6'10", 2'10" equals 9'8". 1'11", 1'11" equals 3'10". This is 10'5". Obviously, I don't need duplicate dimensions, so I'm going to hover my mouse over here, hit Tab, which selects just, and then click on that, and then delete that dimension line. And then you have 2'3", 2'3", which equals 4'6", and that's it. So I like my dimensions to be in 3 stages like that, and the reason why I pull these dimension lines so far out is that I can use this area for callouts. So for instance, oftentimes you run out of space in your on your paper, and here's my elevation mark. I could actually bring my elevation mark in here. If I cut my sections, for instance, where's my section tag? Oh, right here. So if I cut my sections, I don't want to have to, I don't want to cut like that and have my section line cut through this dimension line, because people can make a mistake and say, is it 49 feet from here up, right? So I know that we have crossing dimension lines in the grid lines, but it's kind of a necessary evil at times, but you try not to cross dimension lines if at all possible. So if you have plenty of room between your object and your first line of dimension, then I can actually pull these guys inwards, right? And then if I needed to write something, for instance, like there's a special material here, I can type like that rather than trying to cut across the dimension line and type way out here. And you'll have to do that if your dimension lines are so close to the object. So make sure your first dimension line, you give yourself quite a bit of kind of space cushion, and then after that you can line up in 3 stages, 1, 2, and 3. And then when it comes to dimensioning, let's say inside, well, let me just do the outside one more time here. here's the 3 stages of dimension right there, and obviously I'm probably going to drop another dimension line here, just trying to help locate the arches. But so that's one here, and then once we get into the inside, that's when it gets kind of crazy. But in general, I like to try to string out all my dimensions. So for instance here, I know that this wall is located because of this line, but this wall is not, so I'm going to have to dimension that. So a lot of it is just kind of a feel. I don't like my section cuts to go all the way through, something like this, for the foot. That implies that it cuts all the way through. And then here, I know this wall is located, so I try not to dimension it twice, like I said. But I'll come here and locate this wall. It doesn't matter whether inside or outside. And then maybe that's all I need, really, because these other walls are located, so I would just leave that one pretty tight to that. This wall still needs to get located, so I will locate it from the outside because I have my dimension line on the outside. So that way they put a tape into a consistent edge of the stud, and then I'll dimension that, right? But really later on in the floor plan, I know I have a door here, for instance, so you're going to need to locate it. Another trick with dimensioning is that if you already have one single line here, try not to add more dimension line. Try to keep it all in the same string. So if I have this one here, I'll come here to edit witness line, and then I'll dimension it like that, right? So then I have from the same line, and of course you can readjust this a bit tighter. You can do that. Of course, you could also dimension into the center of the door, which would also be very proper. So these days, whether you do it to the edge or to the center, it really doesn't matter. Just stay consistent. And yeah, I mean, obviously all of these things have to be dimensioned so that they can locate the door properly. Now, if you didn't dimension this door, for instance, it's not going to kill your project. It's not like the contractor won't know what to do, especially on most jobs where it's not really critical, plus or minus an inch or so. Then it doesn't really matter. If it's absolutely critical, then you should dimension it. But if you just left it like this, contractor will just do what they normally do, which is to probably put like 2 studs here. So they'll probably keep it like between 3 and 4.5 inches away from the wall. So it's not going to kill you if you don't dimension everything. But if it's important to you on where it needs to be, you definitely want to dimension it. All right. So inside walls, dimensioning lines are going to cross each other. It's going to get a little bit crazy, but it's got to be done. So for instance here, I might as well use this string to just dimension these walls that hasn't been really located. So I'm going to come here, edit witness line, and again, I use this side of the wall here, so I'm going to click on the same side. That, and this is nice because then you can pull this separately. So you see how this is crossing this 11.6? So maybe I can do this like that, and then hopefully it doesn't cross. So, but eventually some dimension lines are going to cross, but the idea is for you not to cross them if at all possible. And I noticed that I didn't really locate these doors, so again, since they're on the same string, it's easy to move and adjust. And I'm going to go back and add edit witness line, and I'll go center line in this case, like that. And then I have these crazy numbers, so I can come back in here. So I want that at 2 feet. This one. And just kind of finesse these things a little bit so that they don't look so crazy for the contractors to try to measure out on the field. So that would be another way of kind of doing interior dimensions, but you will cross some dimensions. It's just inevitable. You just want to make it as clean as possible and also try to relay as much dimensional information as possible.